Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Occasionally, politicians get interviewed, and in that interview, in the heat of the moment, they open their mouths and they say things that are potentially stupid or dangerous. Humza Yousaf has done just that. He has said something in an interview that could open him up, or him being the party, could open the party up to massive lawsuits that would further cause him problems and could ultimately lead, if it goes the wrong way, to the SNP being wound up. It's that serious. He's done something foolish. He's not thought this through. I think he's been let off the leash, and again, he hasn't had the correct legal advice. So this is one of those things where the man opens up and fails again, but then he really can't help failing. But there's a couple of other interesting points in this interview, so I think it's worth having a look at it. But certainly there's one that jumped out straight away that I thought, you could be in trouble, mate. Anyway, we'll have a look at this article and just talk about the further failure and stupidity of Humza Yousaf. Here goes. So SNP supporters won't be reimbursed independence cash, Humza Yousaf says. Donations won't be refunded even if there is no second independence referendum, the First Minister said. The First Minister has opened his mouth and opened with it a massive can of worms. The SNP supporters who donated cash to the party's campaign for campaign to a second independence referendum will not have their money returned to them even if no such ballot takes place, Humza Yousaf has said. The SNP and Scottish First Minister, the SNP leader and Scottish First Minister spoke out as a police investigation into the whereabouts of more than 600,000, which was donated to the party for independence campaigning, continues. Now, that is a very, very stupid thing to say, because it only takes one person to say that he gave that money strictly on the understanding that it was going to be ring-fenced and that it was going to be used for the independence campaign. And the fact that there isn't going to be one, means that that money has been taken from him under false pretences. That person then would have a case. He could go to a solicitor and he could say, I want my X number of £1,000 back. Or even hundreds of pounds, it doesn't matter. Just take it to the small claims court. And if they go to the small claims court, they're going to win, because obviously they say that they'll have that there, that the money was asked for purely for the second referendum campaign, which has not now happened, and that money has been spent on other things: motorhomes, jewellery, expensive pens, etc. I mean, they were buying Mont Blanc pens. These are thousands of pounds, these pens. How anyone could pay £1,000 on a pen, I don't know. But this is the sort of thing these people have spent this money on, not the independence campaign. And so anyone who did take this to the court to get their however much money back would undoubtedly win. And that would set the precedent. And then not only would the SNP have to pay back, but having been found guilty in court of taking money by false pretences, that would mean that fraud has taken place. The police would be obliged to investigate on a separate matter the fraud that was involved in getting the money in the first place, never mind the spending and disposal of the money. There's now a second investigation to go on about the fraudulent gaining of the money. So then more people would be facing more questions. Again, interviews without coffee, as they say. And it's just another ongoing stupidity of this man. Why would he open his mouth and say that out loud in a public forum in an interview? It is just amazing. Getting back to more of what is bedeviling him. The probe saw Peter Murrell, the former SNP chief executive and husband of ex-First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, arrested and charged and everything there. Yousaf told the broadcaster LBC that he had not spoken to his predecessor since her husband was arrested, but he wanted to check in with her during what will have been a difficult period. In other words, he wanted to get more instructions as what to do next, because he hasn't got a clue. Speaking about the money, the Scottish First Minister told LBC's Tonight with Andrew Marr that the police investigation taking place would be very dangerous for him to comment, because he knows anything he says might be taken out of context and may implicate him and be used against him in a court of law, with luck. But he stated, and this is where he's opening this can of worms, it's where he is in deep trouble now if anyone asks for their money back. Money that is raised from the membership by the party, we're going to spend that in advancing the cause of independence referendum. I'm afraid you're not going to spend it. You've already spent it. You've already spent that money that you was raised, that you said was for the independence referendum, which hasn't happened, and you've spent it on other things. That line is going to get you into trouble, put it that way. He says, we're not reimbursing people for the donations they have made, even though we told them it was for the campaign and that it would be ring-fenced. There you go. That is his guilty admission that the fraud has taken place. People make donations to the party because they want to advance the cause of independence. Every pound and penny that we spend as a party will be on advancing the cause of independence. £1,000 pens, jewellery, pots, pans, very expensive motorhomes, and that's just the least of it. Yousaf, who was elected as SNP leader just less than a month ago after Sturgeon stood down, said he had not contacted her since Peter's arrest. I doubt that. I can't believe that. Nicola and I will speak, though, and we'll do that once she hopefully returns back to Holyrood. So you'll never speak again then, because that woman has got no intention of ever showing her face in that building. She's too ashamed. And I think that that would be the right place to do that. In other words, he doesn't want to ring her up. He doesn't want any trace of him contacting that woman on a phone. And he says, of course, I want to check in with her and her welfare. Or possibly he doesn't know her number because she's thrown away the last number and the one before that, and all those SIM cards being ripped up and disposed. Anyway, but what would be really abundantly clear to both Nicola and, of course, from my perspective, he said, is she and I, the one thing we cannot talk about is the police investigation. We simply can't do that. Well, you can. Yes, you can. There's nothing stopping you. I don't see why you say you can't. He says, but of course I will check in on her welfare. I'm sure it has been a difficult period for her. Well, she did say that it's her worst nightmare. I think you might have worse to come. If you go to jail, my darling, you'll be having lots of nightmares, especially with that man in the cell next to you who pretends he's a woman. He insisted he hoped to have many successes as First Minister. Well, that would make a change. He haven't had any so far. Pledging that tackling child poverty, a problem that his government has exacerbated over the years, which affects almost 1 in 4 children in Scotland, would be his government's defining mission. Yes, child poverty, a problem that was in existence, yes, but has got significantly worse over the last 16 years of SNP rule. But he stated, had he not achieved independence as First Minister by the time he leaves the job, that will be one failure. That'll be another failure, he needs to say there. He raised the issue of a Section 30 order granting the Scottish Government power to hold an independence referendum in his first face-to-face meeting with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on Monday evening. It was the first thing out of his mouth. Yousaf also made clear that this would be the first demand the SNP would make to support Labour in power at Westminster if Sir Keir Starmer's party fails to achieve an overall majority in the next election. And if you think Labour, who is relying on your votes at Westminster to prop up a minority government, is going to give you independence so they lose those SNP MPs, therefore lose the absolute majority, and have to be a minority government, which would then hasten the end and force another election. If you think that's going to happen, you need to think again. Yousaf said the SNP would certainly be willing to cooperate with a Labour government because we want to see the back of the Tories. He added, but of course that would come at a cost, and of course the first demand I would make would be to get the powers over a Section 30 order and having that devolved to Scotland. He said, if there was a hung parliament, then of course we will cooperate. I'll say that unequivocally. Well, you're not going to get it because any party that's relying on you to maintain its power, its grip on power, isn't going to get rid of you. They're not going to give you that independence. Anyway, meanwhile, the First Minister said he did not think that Donald Trump would be rushing to meet with me when he comes to Scotland next week. No, because even Donald Trump recognises a loser. The former US President expects to spend some time in his golf resort, Trump Turnberry, in South Ayrshire. Yousaf accepted he had a duty as a First Minister, of course, to meet other Prime Ministers, Presidents and Heads of State. However, speaking about Trump, he said, I don't think he'll be rushing to meet me. He condemned the anti-Muslim rhetoric that I've heard from Donald Trump, his words, with Yousaf, the first Muslim First Minister of Scotland, adding that he had been particularly aggrieved and angered by some of the language used against London's own Mayor Sadiq Khan at the time when he was president. As a result, he said, I would find it difficult, I have to say, to meet with him without raising the significance of concerns I have of the remarks he's made in the past. Well, I don't think you'll have to worry about it. First of all, he's not going to want to meet you. And secondly, even when he becomes, as is possible, if he becomes president again in 2024, and he comes to Scotland, you would be rushing to kiss his ring, because you know that you're going to be sitting there with the pictures of me and the President of the United States. Oh gosh, it's the best thing ever. Because that's who you are. Nicola Sturgeon kissed the ring. You'd kiss the ring. I've got a letter from the President of the United States, you know. Bill Clinton wrote to me. That's all hand on a typewriter, not on a computer. It was hand typed, and then it was hand signed by Bill Clinton. I don't know how much that's worth, but I think once he carks it, it may go up a little bit. Anyway, so there we are. So that's Yousaf failing again, failing upward, and opening up the party to another potential lawsuit that, if it loses, will see it guilty of fraud. This is a man who should never be First Minister, that's for sure. But he should never be let off the leash. He should not be allowed to give interviews, to talk to people, to do anything without a team of lawyers and policy wonks beside him whispering in his ear. He needs what the old president has, which is the earpiece, and people sitting in another room telling him what to say. And it's the only way to stop making a complete horse's arse of himself. Anyway, I shall finish there and come up.